It's very bright for Hakim Danish there, who you just saw going through the picture. As mentioned, he's once again in the MSI squad for the injured Yusai Yamanaka, who I believe is actually live on Instagram at the moment. So we say with half an eye on this qualifying session. Half an eye on his Instagram feed. As he watches from home. We wish Ryusei all the very best. His recovery injury, he had surgery on the little finger on his left hand prior to Portimao, which is why we aren't seeing him in the final couple of Grand Prix. Brian Oriate then, the Republic's champion and the Junior GP World Champion, who finished that in the run-up to the Portuguese Grand Prix. They've been quietly building into his Moto3 career since we saw him first in Australia, points in both Malaysia and in Portimao. A 13th place finish for him in Portugal, not helped by some severe late tyre drop. No question, from Brian Oriate's point of view, Neil, is very much still to come.
Absolutely. We do have a precedent for a rider stepping into the Iron Moto3 team at the final race here at Valencia. Is a reigning Cup champion and delivering losing a hot spectacular fashion all the way to 2018 and Heavens opened and we had all day seriously wet running. Rider in history to win a Grand Prix race, so Oriate can do something similar, but he is coming to a track that he knows.
.38.4. Nicola Carraro is already into the 37s in the early stage. Debut a couple of races ago, Jesus Rios.
Rios, who's actually been very impressive this weekend. He'll be one to keep an eye on in Q2. Time 7 at the end of play on Friday afternoon. Agustin will be on to a bit of a winner for next year. This weekend, he'll be one to keep an eye on in Q2. He was as high as 7 at the end of play on Friday afternoon. Agustin will be on to a bit of a winner for next year. Nicola Carraro, I'm sure if been a bit harsh by saying slightly fortunate perhaps to have retained his seat in that team. This is his second year, yet we've seen any big moves or shapes from him so far in 2025. Which result 9th and all except the Honda. It's not the ideal package to be on Moto3 at the moment, but it's not fire hands down to convincingly is to be staying on this grid.
He's 23 years of age now, is Carraro. Of course, we first saw him in Moto3 3 years ago when he was Patelli's injury replacement partway through that season. He's 21st in the World Championship is the Italian, so we're certainly expecting for better than that. So with this Italian, Dennis Foggia, who hasn't had the greatest of luck in the back end of the season, of course, after being diagnosed with pneumonia prior to Australia. Turned to action in Portimao and did score a couple of points, even if he had some difficulties, especially in the faster corners of Portimao. Not so many of those for him to worry about here. Foggia goes into second place. He has now joined Carraro in the 137s.
Fortunate ends to Dennis Foggia's 2025, but people can say that for his year on the whole. It's been rather disappointing for a rider that came so close when it was quite right in previous years when he was running for Boulevard Honda. It's just been a real disappointment overall, with the exception perhaps of the Italian Grand Prix and Roman Mugello when he was brilliant and finished on the podium. Highlights from Dennis. Since just one other occasion, that was back in Brno, and also the first race in Thailand as well. That has so many wins in this category as Dennis does. We're expecting a good deal more from him at the start of this year, even though it is obviously quite tricky to step down from Moto2 back into the Moto3 class. Of course, famous memories of him going to the first pick back in 2013.
Tears, didn't it, on the final lap?
It certainly did, yeah. Tony Ortigas was on hand to take advantage from that melee in turn 2 in the final lap, and really felt that was very personal between the two riders that have been fighting for the championship that year. Hosto had sealed the crown in the previous race, and then Foggia came into this race really thinking he had to prove a bit of point. Imagine what they both tangled going up into turn 2. I don't think there was much love lost in there all night.
Neither came out the other end, unfortunately, of that second corner. As Foggia slips a place down to third because Neff has also joined his fellow Italians in the 1:37.9s. 37.925 for Neff, 37.958 for Carraro, 37.965 for Dennis Foggia. Ralston currently holds fourth place on a 38.1, just 4/10 quicker than he went in practice yesterday afternoon. Danish in fifth from his Ripple rookie sparring partner from earlier in the season, Uriarte sixth. Zetmatani seventh for the Honda Team Ace squad. He's put in a 38.3 ahead of Scott Ogden, Ruche Moodley and Eddie O'Shea. Cormac Buchanan, who I'm afraid has taken his crash count up to 35 already this weekend, he's 11th, but we haven't seen anything representative yet from Matteo Bertelli.
Quick word on Cormac Buchanan. There were extenuating circumstances for his crash yesterday morning. It was up at turn 6 where we also saw 3 Moto2 riders crash at the start of the session. It was around there, which caught the Kiwi out, so giving the benefit of the doubt on this occasion. But I do feel that after a really tricky weekend in Portimao, really tricky weekend in Sepang, just his confidence has taken real dent by successful crashes of late, and there's been another tough weekend here for him this Grand Prix, unfortunately, in Valencia.
Straight off his seat and ready to rejoin the action. Well, the glimpse yet of what's happened to Bertelli on his first run, but something that's still right in my head down in place at the moment in this Q1 session. The rest of a 39.3 at the moment for the Italian, who started this 2025 season with back-to-back pole positions in Thailand and in Argentina. Good, if anything, to see Bertelli ending this season back towards his peak physical condition again. You could argue he may never fully get back to his peak physical condition that he was in prior to that horrible injury in the spring. Bertelli, of course, confirmed alongside Esteban that MTA squad for next season. He's hoping to return to the points here this weekend. After 3 races in the points, including a top 10 in Australia, he's now pointless in the last 2.
It would have done him good to have made his return, maybe a little bit ahead of schedule at the end of his season. We will really benefit now from a few months off. We'll be able to get back training and, as Lewis said, return to peak physical condition of testing in February. Not long before it rolls around again. A bit of quiet here before the storm. These final 5 minutes are probably going to be quite hectic. A little surprised to see Scott Ogden down in 8th currently. Ogden has actually been on a really decent run recently. 2 top 10s on points, 2 top 8s on points. Caught up with him very briefly into the race in Portugal. He was absolutely livid. Not because he had finished 8th, but I think more due to having finished 2 places ahead of him. Back with a fellow rider from the British Isles that Scott knows pretty well. He's just ahead, but he will be considered. Things have been last couple of weeks. What happened to Noah Defi? They're back in Malaysia. I think Scott has managed to fly the flag for that team in a very admirable way in the last 2 races.
Just ultimately, it's felt he didn't get his elbows out enough in Portimao. Saw him slip back down the order earlier on, but clearly had the pace to run with the leading groups. He stayed there until the end of the race, but just couldn't make the crucial overtakes to get himself back towards the podium. Currently 8th in this session. There's a rider down somewhere in the first set of yellow flags are waving. The second sector with Brian Uriarte, so we can say for certain it isn't him. Not Matteo Bertelli who's up the road. It's Eddie O'Shea who's gone down. I think he will be joining the Turn 2 club by the looks of it. Yes, he is. He trudges away into the gravel trap. This is a crash that many a rider in the past, present, and in the future has suffered here.
Just a little bit wild to Turn 2 there. Nothing was going to be 10th best in this session, unfortunately, for Eddie. Cut out to get back into the points. There's a few riders here need to be very careful to stay out of the way. Ellie and Uriarte. Uriarte has really benefited from the slipstream of the number 18 up ahead as they come up to this turn 12, which is so crucial to get a good run out. Switch back and through turn 13. You can see Uriarte taking that narrow line. Rear tire moving as he breaks down in towards turn 14. Should be good enough to lift him up from 6th to first in this session.
Good stuff this from the junior world champion, as Patelli will now reel him back in on the way towards the finish line. Oriate buried well into the 37s, a 1:37.535. Only David Almanza, the fastest rider of the weekend so far, has gone quicker than that.
Yeah, like Moto2, that record has taken real pulverising here this weekend. We didn't come here last year, obviously, due to the tragic flooding in this part of the world, which meant that we're making the official debut with Moto3 and Moto2. Have fallen as a result of that. To pick up with hanging Danish, the number 13, trying to go underneath and succeeded to go underneath Scott Ogden through turn number 4.
Enjoying that, he's just done a red first sector. Danish had done the same, as has Patelli, who's at the front of this queue of riders. Patelli and Oriate, of course, they're on their second time lap. They left the pits about a minute and a half before this group are now closing up behind, who are on their first time lap of Road 2. Overall best first sectors for Nepa, Carraro, Danish, Patelli, and for Ogden. Understand, having been passed into turn 4, Ogden's lap has gone away. Danish, though, he's still in touch to potentially lift himself into the top 4.
It's going to be impressive from Danish if he can get through into Q2. It's just his third full-time Grand Prix appearance. He's really getting his elbows out on this lap. That was Zen Mitani that just felt the force of the young Malaysian rider coming through. Danish, who given some brilliant performances in the Red Bull Workers' Cup throughout 2025. And more comeback rounds as well. Well done in the order. As he comes across the line, it's going to be a decent time for Nepa coming in as well. Nepa goes into first, and he jumps up into third. So good enough times from those respective riders.
Foggia is improving at the back of the picture, and he claims 4th place then. He's now down to a 37.8. So Carraro relegated to 5th. Patelli now 6th. So at 38.0, personal best for him wasn't enough as the Aspar team look on. Moment, they are clinging on to a place in qualifying 2 with Dennis Foggia.
Imagine Lewis, the lap record is going to get smashed again when we get round to Q2. To be within 1 minute of a second of it. In this Q1 section, this is doing his best rehearsal for a bit of a comeback ride in tomorrow's race. That is Mitani, Ogden, and Mike Patelli that have felt the full force of him and his overtaking prowess.
That means for Patelli is that he won't be getting out of the top 4 or into the top 4 with the time he's lost, as Danish is all action, isn't he, on board that KTM. That's what you've got to look forward to over the 22 round season of 2026 when he's a full-timer at MSI.
Absolutely. Full commitment there. Excellent turn number 12 from Danish. Excellent stuff indeed. Just a tenth of a second away, halfway around here. Let's see what he can do through split number 3. Still pretty much in the ballpark is Ogden. This could be decent. This could be good enough for a place in top 4.
Danish could be under pressure here because Foggia's also going quickly just behind Carraro. We're watching the number 10 now. Personal best of the moment coming in for the Boe duo, Moodley and Buchanan, currently 7th and 12th. That's the extent of their progress of the order in this Q1 session. So Ogden gets on the line just in time for one more lap, and he's going to need it because he did go briefly into 4th place, but bumped back down to 5th by the improvement of Foggia.
Straight, Scott Ogden, but at least he does have this one last flying lap. As Foggia goes under, I think that was Cormac Buchanan down into turn 1. Brian Oriate is pretty confident that the work that he has done so far in Q1 will be enough to see him through. And just looking at our timing screens, I'm inclined to agree with him. So we've got one personal best sector coming in from Bertelli, who finds himself down in 7th, but it's a very crash that's popping up on our timing screens.
Nepa's 37.4 also looks pretty safe. If one rider beats that, you wouldn't expect 4 to. So Danish now goes back past, or tries to go back past his fellow debutant in the World Championship full-time next season. They've been up to another big moment this time for Danish, this time losing it through 3. And that's particularly Bolt Bertelli, who had set a personal best in the first set, and of course now is badly held up once he arrives at turn 4.
Scott Ogden has had a crash right at the end of this session, so that is the Englishman's chances of progressing through into Q2 over. Is that a real shame for Ogden? Just looking at the timing screens, Ogden had set a personal best second sector, so he was absolutely on it down here into turn number 8. That was, just as though he was trying to pass mudder up ahead, which just went wrong.
Just looked like he was in a little bit hot, didn't he, on that inside line as he was desperately trying to salvage a place in the top four. Carraro's not going to do that. His lap has been cancelled for track limits, so the limits of Carraro's progress is 6 in this session. He's been 20th on the grid for the Italian. Just a place higher than he started in Portimao last weekend, where he didn't salvage a point, so still something to fight for Carraro tomorrow. Top four are locked in. Stefano Nepa, who will be taking some confidence from that. 137.450 for Nepa. It's set to be his 139th final Moto3 start this weekend. Of course, there are still questions about who will be the second rider at the Citroën Gates Portugal's team. They are reserving that place for Noah Detweiler if he is fit enough and happy enough to return in the future. Should he not choose to do so or not be fit enough to do so, then maybe Nepa's time in this paddock might not be over just yet, but certainly as we speak to you now, it will be his Moto3 farewell tomorrow.
He did manage to catch up with Noah Detweiler's manager just on air. He was telling me some good news that his progress and his rehabilitation continues. He's very, very happy with his progress. Noah is in really good spirits as well. He transferred to a new rehabilitation unit which will start his recovery. All his surgery was done and dusted. So that was just fantastic news, and I'm sure you saw on social media earlier today. So Jose Antonio Rueda had to be back in the aisle box here this weekend, also looking in very good spirits. So what happened in Japan? Absolutely fabulous news that both riders are getting on so well.
Yeah, agree more with that. Rueda will be cheered also by the performance of his placement, I guess we have to call him, in the IO team, not just this weekend, but next year. Brian Ariarte, second quickest. Rueda, who we'll be hearing from very, very shortly. So stick with us in a few moments when we go on air for qualifying 2. Q1, top slow by Stefano Nepa, ahead of Brian Ariarte, Dennis Foggia. And Hakim Danish. Scott Ogden missing out by just 15 thousandths of a second, but of course a crash on his last run. Fifth for him ahead of Carraro, Vatelli, Rugli and Ralston, who returns to action from 23rd on the grid. The tiny 10th ahead of Eddie O'Shea and Paul McPhee, which starts at the back. So Stefano Nepa. Back to the Ricardo Tormo circuit, which we are delighted to welcome back as our season finale in 2025. So many of us in this paddock missed our visit to Valencia last year. Of course, shared our sympathies with those whose lives were affected by the floods over a year ago. It's a joy to be back. Spiritual home of the Grand Prix season finale. Second round of 2025 in MotoGP, with the final sprint to come at around about 3 p.m. local time, just under 2 hours away. We'll be off and running with the 13-lap sprint. Before that, of course, we have a Moto2 qualifying session which will have serious implications for the world title decider tomorrow between Diogo Moreira and Manu Gonzalez. Of that, we also have the final Moto3 qualifying session of the season. But you name it, to the 12 pole sitters already so far this season. That is your Q2 lineup. Whatever happens in this Q2 session, no one will be able to match the 5 pole positions this season for the world champion, who of course has been out injured since that horrible accident on the exciting lap in Malaysia. Well, we are delighted to welcome the world champion back with us, and Jose Antonio Rueda is speaking now in pit lane to Elliot.
Certainly, good afternoon to everyone, and a very good afternoon to you, Jose. Fantastic to see you first and foremost. How are you? Good to see you looking well.
Thank you so much. Yeah, day by day better. All the things so good, but also to back again.
One showdown remaining was the Moto Grand Prix of the Valencia community, the most on the turn. Ricardo Thomas.
Preparation for Moto2, but completely understandable. And I think we all would have taken that situation, wouldn't we? A couple of weeks ago in Malaysia.
Just seeing back here and back smiling is a victory for Jose Antonio Rueda, who has done so much winning this season. 10 victories, of course, in his spectacular run to the Moto3 World Championship. Of course, who joins him? Well, we know who's going to join him at the MotoGP Awards, but we don't know in which order they'll finish the World Championship. It will be Angel Piqueras and Max Quiles, who join him as the second and third best riders in the world this year. As it stands at the moment, it's Piqueras with an 8-point advantage over Quiles. Quiles, of course, confirmed a couple of rounds ago as the Rookie of the Year. Piqueras, well, he was 9th, Quiles 8th in practice yesterday. A practice session which I guess the colour was sky blue as Leopard Honda dominated 1 and 2 yesterday. Devon Almanza quickest in practice, quickest in pre-practice 2 earlier on today. As Almanza has also been on pole position as recently as Malaysia 2 rounds ago. And he starts favourite?
Well, possibly. He's had 2 pole positions in the last 7 Grand Prix, so he has been pretty handy on a Saturday afternoon of late. Certainly his speed so far this weekend has been quite questioned, but so many hungry riders around him that I think we're going to be giving him something to think about in the next session. You mentioned Max Quiles. He is absolutely determined with his 3rd win of the season in Portugal a week ago to overhaul Angel Piqueras tomorrow for 2nd in the championship, just 8 points separate them. And then you have the likes of Álvaro Carpe and Joe Kelso, who are fighting for 4th in the championship, a position currently held by the injured David Munoz, who continues to be sacked on the sidelines.
Yes, of course, sticking around in Moto3 next season, the intact squad, where he'll be joined by Almanza for next season. Surely be one of the title favourites, along with Quiles, of course. But yeah, heading into next season as the runner-up for the World Championship this season, despite being too young to even start the opening round or 2 of the campaign. Q2 is underway. To decide our final pole sitter of the season. Isiel Gorman. It's another opportunity to impress. Or did he impress on that intact KTM last time out? It was the first time he'd ridden a KTM in Grand Prix motorcycle racing. His previous outings, of course, were on a 658 Squadron Course Honda, which he will ride full-time next season. And I think we were expecting good things from Isiel Gorman, but even our expectations were exceeded by what Casey did a week ago.
Yeah, you was pretty impressive in his 2 previous World Championship audience, and he was deputising in the 658 squad in mid-season. Finished in the points in Hungary, even just a second appearance, which was quite impressive at the time, but qualified in the second row and to fight for the podium throughout the race. Never really slow or drop away in the closing laps. Competitive right up until the checkered flag and take a safe place in just his 3rd appearance. Wow, and I'm not just saying that because I hail from a similar part of the world. That's Casey, it's nothing to do with patriotism. It was a genuinely impressive performance from the young rider who was the number 67. I think potentially an indicator of what we may see a bit more frequently in the future. Fabulous to have a rider from the British Isles capable of doing that in his 3rd race.
No one would dare question your integrity, Neil. Don't worry about that. Casey O'Gorman, as you mentioned, full-time next season with 658. Heading across to Leopard for next season in what is going to be a winter of quite a lot of change in Moto3 between the various teams. Is Guido Pini. He is certainly very well. None of us came here in any class of racing last year. Pini is very familiar with this Ricardo Tormo circuit from his years in the European Talent Cup. Pini's now attacking turn 2 as Tayo Furusato makes his way towards turn 1 in his final Moto3 qualifying session.
Stepping up to Moto2 with the Honda Team Asia squad 2026, so this is his farewell. He's been blowing out something Nash, hasn't he, over the last couple of weeks. His debut win 2 races ago in Malaysia, second on the grid, and then he had a fine fight through the field in Portimao 1 week ago. 11th he qualified, ended up finishing in 3rd. The Quiles and Piqueras had better speed than him at the end of the race. So Furusato, after, I would say, a largely underwhelming and slightly disappointing season, I had high expectations for him to fight for the championship this year. Never quite came to pass, but certainly ended 2025 with some style.
Sole Honda winner so far this season, although certainly the Spanish pair at Leopard will be intent on changing that this weekend. Bit of an anticlimactic sort of start, isn't it, to this Moto3 qualifying session? We've only 3 riders at the moment out on the racetrack. Pini Furusato and Andrew Fernandez, who's on his out lap right now. So we'll follow Pini into the final corner to see what kind of pace he's setting. We're expecting 37s, if not 36s, in this qualifying 2 session. We'll see what Pini is able to achieve as he now charges towards the finish line into low 38 for Guido Pini on 38.116. Next season, he'll be riding in the colours of Leopard, and Leopard have been the team to beat so far in this Valencia Grand Prix weekend. So can they translate that into pole position? Mirjak Couture is with us.
Yeah, it's only Mirjak, good to speak to you this afternoon. Your boys are looking good this weekend, especially David. Some great pace throughout practice this weekend, and I feel like everyone's waiting for him to go out at this moment in time.
No, they look good, yeah, during, on Friday, Saturday, but as I said before, I hope that this will continue, especially for the qualifying and the race. We were very good on Friday, Saturday, a little bit more difficult in the race. It's not as we expected, but I hope for the last race that we will be doing better than we did since the beginning of the year, for sure.
David said Valencia is his favourite circuit, and yesterday and this morning he's had superior pace to everyone else, at least a couple of tenths quicker over the long laps and over 1 lap, so he must be feeling really confident going into qualifying.
Yeah, he's quite confident. I mean, we remember the first test in February this year where we were with him, and we did a big step. He did a big step also. So we are very happy with him, what he's doing now. And let's try to close this last race.
And on the other side of the box, that's David and Valentin just going out on track. On the other side of the box, Adrian, he also looks strong. I'm guessing he's super motivated in front of his home fans, like David, to try and end the season on a high with a podium at least.
Yeah, both of them are very motivated. So David, he did a podium this year in Malaysia, not as we wanted because Fernandez was disqualified, but both of them are strong here. So and both of them want to finish this season with a podium.
Good luck, mate, Jack. Thank you for talking to us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Midrag. Thanks to Elliot. At the moment, it is a Honda on provisional pole, but it's not a Leopard Honda. It's a Honda Team Asia rider, Tyre Furusato. He's put in a 1:37.459, matched to within 34 thousandths by Fernandez. And 3 riders, as mentioned, a set of time at the moment. Heaney third on that 38.1 that he set on his first lap. There is Midrag Couture, you were hearing from a second ago, just on the right of picture. The rest of the field collectively have now joined the action to dispute this final pole position, and Elliot was absolutely right. They were all waiting for David Almanza.
Almanza's going to have his credentials tested here in these coming minutes. So Max Quiles, a rider that will certainly be in the running for victory tomorrow. He's just up behind him, and Vicaras there as well. Quiles, it is worth pointing out, last time out in Portugal was absolutely awesome, and probably the most dominant ride we've seen from Quiles so far in his very short Moto3 career. The first time we've seen him win with a bit of margin, but with the rest of the field, and maybe he got a little bit fortunate that Angel Vicaras got pushed about a bit in the pack toward the end and just gave him that little moment where he could break clear. He's back in the pack, but still, to ride with that kind of maturity, not even with the full World Championship season under your belt, is seriously impressive. But that's what he's been doing right the way throughout this year.
The team are informing Almanza that he's been followed by Quiles, but Almanza's just getting on with it on this lap, as has his teammate Adrian Fernandez. The cleverest cookie out there might well be Marco Morelli, who is right behind Quiles, who's of course following Almanza. As we now follow Fernandez across the line. This could be a lap record as well as provisional pole, and it's both a 1:37.282. We expected the lap record to be beaten in this Q2 session, and it is beaten by another Leopard Honda.
Yeah, seriously impressive stuff from Adrian Fernandez. Could we see a lap time in the 1:36s here in Moto3? I was not expecting to say that coming into this weekend. Previous lap record in the Dunlop era of Moto3 was at 38.2. Already gone a second under that. Not too far away from dipping into the 36s. Fernandez could be tough to beat, judging by the current laps we are seeing. Almanza, though, despite the train of riders behind him, is just getting on with the job. As you said, Lewis, this is a very impressive time from him.
Also good laps coming in just behind them by Peroni, Nepa and Carpe, who are all within around 100th of a second each other. They could all be about to go on to the second row shortly if they keep their current rate of performance. Who else is also going well at the moment? Says on the CIP Green Power machine, who's in for the injured Debbie, that he's also on a fairly slow lap. Quiles then down to a 37.1 with a strong final sector, aided in part by Almanza up the road, and he takes pole position away from the 22. So it's now Aspar Leopard.
Yeah, look at the rider in third, Marco Morelli, the number 95, the third rider in this group that is on our screens here. And we were saying last time out in Portugal, weren't we, Lewis, just how impressive Morelli has been since he came in as a regular fixture in the NLAV squad, and this would comfortably be their best qualifying performance in the dry, I believe. So Morelli once again showing that he is a real rider to watch in the future, and when he jumps across onto an Aspar KTM next year, I think he's going to be one to watch for sure.
So second in the Junior GP World Championship at the moment to Uriarte, as once again Quiles taking the Quiles line. We often see him jumping the other side of the curbs when the regulations allow him to do that. The tarmac is painted green, you don't get penalised for that, because the theory is that it's actually slower to go out there. As Morelli carves under the 28, because Morelli's trying to put an NLAV Honda on pole position here, which would be another of all stories to close our Moto3 qualifying 2025 campaign. Almanza, though, just not remotely interested by what's going on behind him, and he could be the rider to set that first 1:36 of Valencia in Moto3.
Really could, and could be joined by Morelli as well, who's on course to go second. He's got the perfect guy just up ahead of him, 6 bike lengths ahead as they come around turn 14 and accelerate. I'm sure if Morelli's close enough to gain from the slipstream just up ahead from the number 22, but Almanza, is this going to be our first ever 36? Oh, narrowly misses out on that, but still good enough for provisional pole.
Morelli also lost time in that final sector, so he stays fourth. Carpe's fifth on the first of the IO machines, and Nepa via qualifying one sits in sixth. Don't need to scan through my notes too much to tell you that that would be Stefano Nepa's best qualifying since he was on the front row for the very first race of the season back in Thailand.
There was confirmation of the new records. Going back to Nepa, it looked so rosy back in Thailand, didn't it? Qualified second, finished fourth, and we thought, okay, for potentially his best season yet, but it really has gone awry in quite a spectacular fashion. Still yet to understand what Stefano's plans would be for 2026. And really strong opening stint that from both Almanza and Michael Morelli on our screens. Decent as well from Quiles. He's liable for second in the championship as we see. Wow, that is a crazy front end moment that he has saved on his left knee, almost his left elbow as well, coming through turn number 8.
10 almost resembling a pogo stick there for Quiles as he began to counter those problems, which he did a very good job of reacting to. Another one of those at turn 1 earlier on, as Elliot informs us. Which didn't quite do justice there, the super slow-mo, just how little time he had to react to that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can tell he's Mark Marquez's protege. Those kind of antics. Quiles is a very, very special talent. And speaking about this, I quite his rookie season with Capital the other day, he was going through his results, and he's pretty much been in the fight for the podium every single race he's participated in so far this year, with 1 or 2 exceptions. And to have that kind of consistency right off the bat does make you feel for next year's championship as to whether it will be a competitive contest. Hopefully there will be other names that can rise up to the occasion. Likes of Munoz, you have to imagine, will be there. Alvaro Parque as well, but Quiles will undeniably go into 2026 to be a bit more if you agree, Lewis.
Completely with that. So let's say I wouldn't be putting too much more money on it, so I don't think I'll get very good odds on that. That's Quiles at the moment. Of course, in the battle in this year's championship for second overall, one chance advantage Quiles. His qualifying finish now. He's in the middle of the front row at the moment. There has been a strong first run for Angel Queiroz, who hasn't been able to do a lap in the 37th so far, a 38.005. Queiroz currently in 14th place.
Yeah, slightly surprising, although we do see this quite often from Queiroz in qualifying. Tends to be a little far adrift after the first run and leaves a bit of pressure on his shoulders for the final time attack. He's going to do the same here as well. Joel Kelso just up ahead of him. We've spoken about the Australian either. 10th position for Kelso. Last chance to win a race for the KTM before he moves across to the NLAB squad next year.
Finally on for Queiroz, will be a level of relief for Angel. Joel Esteban is not replacing Jacob Ralston this weekend. It's fair to say that Queiroz wasn't particularly impressed by the aggression of Esteban 6 days ago in Portimao. So much so that Queiroz said that I basically ended up saving my tyres all Grand Prix for absolutely nothing because I wanted off the racetrack in the very closing stages and had to recover to second place.
Queiroz absolutely used to those kind of antics. He's normally one dishing those kind of moves out to everyone. So the riders have given themselves just enough time to do one more flying lap in this section. And we'll see further improvements. Good edge, David Almanza off provisional pole at 37.1, as you can see, is the time to beat. Joel Kelso leads this little gaggle down into turn 1, which features Nepa, this year Bowman. Moriarty and Alvaro Parque is in there as well.
Big threat to Almanza at the moment is coming from his teammate, Adrian Fernandez, who's in a different pack to the riders we're watching. He's coming towards the final corner now. So glance over my commentary box window and expect to see a Leopard Honda passing. He does now. Here comes Adrian Fernandez. This is going to be a Leopard 1-2. It is. And Adrian Fernandez is in to the 136s. Lunetta behind him has also got himself into 4th place. That's his first lap time on the session. So now we've got Honda's 1st, 2nd, 4th and 5th.
The Honda's best Moto3 qualifying performance across the grid for quite some time. It's hearing in the headsets, and Morelli is continuing on used rubber, so it's not a fresh set of Pirelli tyres for the young Argentinian. Taro Furusato comes across the line and goes into 6th.
Morelli has taken the checkered flag, so he will not be improving on what is now 5th place, relegated by the improvement there for Lunetta. For Osato then onto the 2nd row, so it is now 1, 2, 4, 5 and 6 for the Hondas, who at least are ending this season on a high. And at the moment, it's Honda versus Honda for pole. It's Fernandez versus Lunetta at the moment, because Luca Lunetta is also halfway round.
Decent lap time coming in from Joel Kelso. Decent lap. Oh, and that's Kissio Bowman, who's just crashed out down at turn number 14. I was just about to say the Irishman was 2/10 off coming through split number 3.
Forsato had his lap time cancelled, so he's now back to 9th, and those will be some yellow flags potentially, which could impact. But Keras has got 10th anyway, as Fernandez is continuing to improve. Not that he needs to. A little bit of a rueful slap in the tank for Almanza, who's been beaten to the dinner table by his teammate, by the looks of it, Adrian Fernandez, who's one of the last riders to take the checkered flag. He needs to keep pushing though, because Luneta's going very quickly behind him. Quiles won't be threatening pole position. That bike is still being wheeled away, so I'm not sure whether these lap times will be valid. We'll treat them as they are at the moment though, as the 31 leads the 58 over the line, and Adrian Fernandez does not improve, but neither does Luneta. So it's another pole position for the Leopard squad. Almanza had taken 2 pole positions. Adrian Fernandez now joins in with his second pole of 2025.
Second pole of this year, third career pole. He's not been particularly used to the top spot on Saturday afternoons, but he's done it here with an exceptional time. He knew that record, and the first ever Moto3 lap time in the 1 minute 36 is here. Honda
first, second, fourth and fifth in that qualifying session. I have to give a huge shout out for Marco Morelli. Whatever you say about how he did it, up behind some faster riders, but he was not exactly struggling to keep up with them, was he? Marco Morelli on the MLab Honda, standing effort to put himself in the middle of row 2. As far as second in the championship is concerned tomorrow, but this rider certainly has the advantage on the grid, with Quiles starting on the front row in third. Keras only able to lift himself up to 10th in the end.
Another really impressive performance from Max Quiles. Just a reminder, yes, to win and hope that Keras not finish second tomorrow to guarantee third in the championship. And you might think that doesn't mean a great deal, but when we spoke to Quiles after his victory in Portimao, it most certainly does mean a great deal to number 28. A good performance for him. It's the first time in 7 Grand Prix that Quiles has been on the front row. It's been a bit of a barren spell for him on Saturday afternoons. But not even Rookie of the Year in 2025 could live. Fernandez and David Almanza. So yesterday, Leopard Honda riders. A real flex in front of the rest of the Moto3 field. Almanza was second faster than everyone else except his teammate, which suggested he did have something a little bit extra up his sleeve, and so too did Adrian Fernandez, as it turned out in qualifying.
It's fair to say there have been a few Friday false dawns for Leopard this season. It's not uncommon to be talking about David Almanza in particular topping practice on a Friday, while Leopard as a whole. At least the field did close in the end in qualifying. As we mentioned, their advantage was much greater in practice, but it is still a 1-2 on the grid for the Leopard squad. Taken victory here before. That dramatic 2021 battle where Dennis Foggia was involved in a crash with Pedro Acosta on the last lap. That did hand victory to, at that time, Foggia's Leopard teammate, Xavi Artigas. Leopard haven't won around this circuit since. Have a very good chance tomorrow. Quiles, as we mentioned, getting a bit of a Saturday slump take its place on the front row of the grid. Of course, it would also mean an awful lot to the Valencia-based Aspar team if Quiles can take not only victory but second place in the World Championship tomorrow.
Which would be an awesome achievement considering he missed the first 2 races of the year because he wasn't old enough to compete, and the third and fourth races of the year because he had broken his thumb. So Quiles was really playing catch-up, but consistency since his return. Poised to have another go at podium positions in tomorrow's race. Even Max has to acknowledge that Adrian Fernandez was just the faster rider today.
Underperformers in that qualifying session as we look at older brother Raul congratulating younger brother Adrian. Seeing Raul on track an hour and a half's time. Tiso sprint. Yeah, the underperformers. You could argue for Forsato, of course, losing his lap that would have put him on the second row. In the end, it's third row for Tayo. Keras, as we've covered, 10th. Joe Kelso down in 12th place. So no back-to-back poles for the Aussie, who's led 8 Grand Prix this season without winning any of them. To get his overtaking boots on tomorrow, and he's to battle for a final Grand Prix victory in his last range for KTM. Place for 14th. Casey Goldman, of course, would have been higher on the grid. Not had that crash at the final corner. He'll have to go from 15th place on the grid tomorrow. Guido Pini, who's one of the first to go on track, only 17th. So we're expecting a little bit more from the future Leopard rider.
Yeah, Gorman was, I think, 2/10 off through the third split when he did crash, so potentially could have been on the second or third roll. It could have been another really impressive performance, but it was what cut out 15th inside of the number 5. But Saturday is blue in terms of Moto3, light blue. First and second.
Blue is the colour, Leopard is the name. Adrian Fernandez, your pole sitter for the final round of 2025. He's speaking well.
Doing a great job to stick on pole here in Valencia. That must feel pretty special, and you're looking good for that first victory tomorrow. Tell us about that lap and your thoughts on tomorrow's race as well.
Yeah, I do a really good lap. I think my team may go really fast, and I need to take a little bit time for do a really good lap. And I think I have a good feeling. I train for tomorrow for do my dirt racing in my race, and I want to say thank you all the team and also all my family.
Well done, Adrian. Good luck for tomorrow.
Thank you.
And he, of course, is staying at Leopard for next season. Almanza on the move to Intact. Close on a couple of occasions, hasn't he, to Grand Prix victory. Second in Argentina at the beginning of the year, second in Indonesia last year. Just wouldn't have been far away from the victory had he not picked up the penalty for taking out David Munoz late in the Mandalika battle this year. Real opportunity for both Leopard Honda riders to break their victory duck tomorrow. It's the grid. Positions on the grid who has won a Grand Prix, and that's the rookie Max Quiles. Adrian Fernandez on pole then ahead of his teammate Almanza. Quiles third ahead of Lanetta, Morelli and Carpe. Stunning pick that for the Argent time. Nepa, 7th on the grid for him, his best since the opening weekend in Thailand. Peroni 8th ahead of Rosato Piqueras, who has to go from 10th to secure second in the championship. Adrian Cruz has a fine job for him in 11th ahead of Kelso Oriarte, Oji and O'Gorman, who missed out on a potential top 10 with that late crash. Jesus Rios in 16th place after making his first Q2 appearance. We have Pini and Denise for company. Often's late crashing Q1 back in 19th, then Carrara, Fratelli, Bucci, Boston, Matani, Eddie O'Shea. We also saw Pauling in qualifying 1. He's 25th ahead of Cormac Buchanan. The season set for a grandstand finish for Leopard as they secure a 1-2 on the grid for the Valencia Grand Prix. Moto2 qualifying coming up, and there are some serious title implications on the Q1 session, which comes up next. Afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the final Super Saturday afternoon of the season. We still don't know who our Moto2 world champion is going to be for the next couple of qualifying sessions. Q1 is up next. If you haven't been following this Valencia Grand Prix so far this weekend, well,